Welcome, grade 11s, to the next part of ecology. All right, so last time we did CO2 emissions and the carbon footprint. Please remember your definition of what a carbon footprint is. And then we spoke about how carbon dioxide actually can affect and where it comes from, and acid rain and all those bits and pieces. So today we're going to be doing deforestation, and we're going to briefly start the greenhouse effect. I'm not going to do the actual effects of global warming and how that it has created the greenhouse effect, because that lesson would have just been far too long, and I would like to keep these maybe a bit more shorter because they require a bit more understanding. Alrighty, so first and foremost, what is deforestation? I love asking this and give the correct biological terminology. So it's the removal of forest for timber, agricultural, or urban development. I am quite happy with you also saying cutting down of trees, but please make sure that like it says removal of forest, so like cutting down of many trees, okay? And there's a really sad diagram in the back over there where you can see deforestation has occurred, and to a large extent they've actually chopped up the roots, and you can think how ancient that tree truly is. It really is an old soul, and people have just cut it down, and it could be for a whole bunch of reasons. If you were like, if you're feeling as crazy about this as I am, there is a what do you call it, documentary you can go watch called If a Tree Falls. It is so sad about how certain parts of the Amazonian forest have been sold off to certain parts of the world, specifically China, for next to nothing, because the people that live on those lands get offered money for the trees, even though it doesn't belong to them. So they're saying, well, obviously this is my land and I live over here. So if you want to, come in and cut down my trees, just pay me a very small fee, enough for me to maybe get by 1 or 2 months. Then by all means, that's how it rolls. So a lot of these trees have been cut down for no reason whatsoever. Well, like the worth of those trees in the ground is far higher than it is on a table or a chair or a couch or as paper. So people like in the rest of the world who don't know the worth of trees actually are damaging the environment far more rapidly than we'd like to admit. Okay, so let's look at the causes of deforestation. Why do we deforest? Okay, the greatest cause of tropical rainforest destruction today comes from human activities such as commercial logging, roads and railways, fuel wood collection, mining and drilling, forest fires, clearance for living space, and clearance for agriculture. But sir, trees regrow. Sure, Jan. You also get trees which grow far faster than each other, faster than others. So you get your hardwoods and your softwoods. A softwood is something like a pine tree, and that grows extremely quickly, but the quality of the wood is very low. So we want to use it for like paper, and maybe like stuff around the house that isn't going to last for many, many, many years. The hardwoods, something that grows maybe like 10 meters can take over 50, 60 years. So whereas a pine tree can grow that high maybe within 5 years. So using different trees for different solutions is quite important. And then with the whole idea of us creating wood fires as well, it's really sad because we're just cutting down these extremely fancy trees for just to keep us warm and maybe have a fancy braai with all of our friends. I don't know. It's a bit of a sad idea. Then while I'm at it, we may as well talk about charcoal as well. So charcoal can only be made out of extremely high quality woods. So what they do is they actually create a pizza oven, what looks like a big dome, and they shove all the wood in there and they start a fire, and then they seal it, so that there's just enough heat to actually dry out the wood and actually take all the chemicals away, but allow the structure to remain. The problem with creating charcoal is that it is extremely ineffective. I think in the documentary I'm busy talking about, the If a Tree Falls, they were saying that only about maybe 60% of the wood put in actually survives. Now think about it. You put a ton in, you're only going to get 600 kilograms out. So obviously you're not going to produce that much. But I mean, even if you put in 10 kilograms, you're only going to get 6 kilograms out. You're going to lose 4 of those kilograms. And it's just because the process of making this stuff is that bad. All right, it looks like a whole lot going on at the same time. So let's just quickly go through this. So it says more people equal fewer trees. Okay. And then it talks about the idea of suffocation all the way on the far right hand side. So let's look at the green. So it has a billion acres of healthy forests, okay, and this is over time. So you can see there's 1870, and then we have 2030 right at the end on the far right hand side, okay. So we have trees, and there were about 4 billion acres in 1870, and we can see that already in 1990 that it's reduced by 1.5 billion acres of trees. I mean, that's a lot. That's crazy. But we notice that as the amount of people increase, so the amount of trees decrease. Okay, so people release carbon dioxide, whereas trees release oxygen, and we can see that eventually, if we reduce all of our trees to almost zero, we are not going to have any oxygen. Okay, so approximately we estimate that it's 170 trees per hour, and think how long some of those have taken. Okay, and then also at 1910, 1930, and 1950, you can actually see how what was discovered. So we found axes in 1910, we found saws in 1930, chainsaws in 1950, and then over time, as we've started to create logging machines, the amount has just rapidly reduced. So at approximately just before 2010, we reduced the amount of trees by half. Okay, nothing from 1870 to 2010, that's 40 years. In 40 years, we have reduced the population size of all trees by half. Now, what has been very recently recognized is that people have been planting more and more trees. So this isn't a true reality. I mean, like everything I teach you in ecology, you really have to take with a pinch of salt. You even have to take me with a pinch of salt. But what really needs to be paid attention to is just like the natural trend of what you are seeing in front of you, because it's not always true. But remember that this is extremely unsustainable because trees can't grow faster than we cut them down. All right, so what happens to rainwater in deforested areas? I love asking stuff like this. So please, I don't know if you want to draw this, or maybe just, do a very brief, like grade 5 sketch of this. Just like put a fake little tree, a fake little river, and then we'll see what's going on over here. So this is all going to allude to erosion, and if you're a geography student, you are extremely lucky in this instance. So let's have a look at what is going on. So we're going to start right at the top over there where it said the wooded slopes. Okay, so that means that there should be trees. Let's look at what happens on the right hand side. So this is if there are trees. This is why it is good. Okay, so evaporation and transpiration pool supply water vapor to form new clouds, leading to more rainfall in the surrounding areas. The rain falling on the trees passes slowly to the soil and enters the leaf litter and drains slowly, because it's almost like there's a barrier for the water. The tree roots stabilize the hillsides and prevent soil erosion, and rivers flow slowly across the valley, supplying water and nutrients to vegetation. Okay, so having trees or having plants as a whole is extremely important. Now I'm going to bring up two things while we're here. First thing is the idea of transpiration. So I hope you know that the amount of water that is released out of leaves actually can create clouds. Now, a lot of our rain doesn't necessarily just come from the ocean directly, because water doesn't evaporate that well because of all the salts and bits and pieces inside. So it actually comes from a very well-known, South Africa's rain, by the way, comes from a very well-known forest called the Amazonian rainforest. So all those clouds that are created on the far eastern coast of South America actually move directly to the right and hit South Africa, allowing for a lot of our rain. Now, if we cut the Amazon rainforest down, that means that we're going to have less and less access to clouds, and less clouds mean less rains, and that is what's going to what's going to force us to become a desert-like area. And as is, we are already semi-arid, which means that we're very dry as is. Now you want to dry us out even more. So stop cutting down the Amazonian rainforest. The second part I wanted to point out to you was the roots themselves actually allow for the binding of the soil to them. And if it binds, you'll note that the soil won't be able to move as much. And if it can't move as much, that means that it can't run away. And if it can't run away, that means that we won't be dragging all the nutrients that are found in the soil down to the river. Okay, so let's have a look if we don't have a forest on the left-hand side. Rainfall, melting snowfall quickly down the slope, eroding the surface of the hillside and washing away topsoil. Do you need to know how the process of erosion occurs? No. Do you need to know what it is? Yes. It's the movement of water past it very rapidly that's able to pick up all the soil particles as well as rip apart the stone that is there and actually eat away at the soil. Okay, deep channels cut and soil is carried to the valley and deposited, often causing flooding. And between rainy periods, the dry land dries quickly and the soil particles may be blown away in dust, storms causing deserts. Okay. Another thing I wanted to point out, so I don't know if you recognize, whenever you've driven to, what is that area? Oh, when you drive to Monte Cassino from the south, and along the way there is a huge mine dump on the right hand side. It's quite yellow in color, and it's for a long period of time it was really dangerous because a lot of that really fine dust was actually being kicked up and blown all the way across town and was creating a lot of havoc and pollution and actually causing a lot of respiratory diseases. And scientists struggled for a long time because they knew that they could, if they grew plants on there, that it would be able to hold all the soil, but they couldn't find a plant that could survive in those very acidic soils, especially those soils which have been treated with very dangerous chemicals to actually extract all the ore out of them. So what they went and did first was they put those windbreaks up. So it's like these zigzag green things, and that stopped wind from blowing all the soil, because you also can't plant something if the soil keeps on moving. So they put those green zigzag things up which stop the soil from moving, and then they planted trees and shrubs, and they've now found that those trees and shrubs are absorbing all the dangerous nutrients, which hopefully means that in the future those lovely trees can actually be used, and we can extract more metal from them as well. There was a guy when I was doing my honors, he was doing his masters, and he was looking at how certain plants are able to absorb gold, and if we can extract those plants and regrow them, we can actually extract the gold directly out of them. How cool is that? Plants directly infused with gold. All right, so this is just some of the problems with deforestation. So if I increase deforestation, I'm going to affect global warming, and we'll talk about global warming in a bit, because global warming, if it increases in temperature, more trees aren't going to be allowed to grow. But if we take more trees away, we're not going to allow for rain to occur, and that's going to directly affect how much heat is directly put into the atmosphere, because there's no leaves to absorb all of the what do you call those things? Ultraviolet rays. So if we cut down more trees as well, we're going to have loss of natural resources. We're also going to have loss of biodiversity. Okay, so we're not going to have natural resources to do our basic things like the paper that you're about to write this on. We're also going to have a loss of biodiversity because those trees are homes to many plants, animals, and insects, and with that, things are just going to collapse, especially bees. All right, and with loss of natural resources and loss of biodiversity, we're going to suffer from food insecurity, because remember, a lot of our fruits come from trees, a lot of our nuts come from trees. So if we lose all of those trees which provide all of that food, we're not going to be able to eat properly. If we can't eat properly, it creates a food insecurity, and areas that are really struggling with a large lack of food, they're going to struggle with it as well. So this is pretty much one big essay, but I only expect you to know those four main things. All right, now we're going to move away from deforestation, and we're going to look at greenhouse effects. I'm not going to go into the effects just yet, okay? Otherwise this lesson would just take forever. I'm talking quite a bit as well, so I've actually got some water on hand just in case. So let's talk about global warming and greenhouse gases. You need to know the greenhouse gases off by heart, unfortunately. There's no way around it. You've learned about them for years and years and years, and you've heard about them, so let's make them more official. So one of the greatest threats caused by air pollution is global warming. Global warming is a cause of build-up of greenhouse gases, which leads to an increase in the Earth's temperature. Okay, so if you know me being a botanist, I've always wanted a greenhouse gas for myself one day. I just need a place in my garden that I can actually build one day, and I'll be able to grow beautiful plants. So a greenhouse is exactly what they've got over there, over the world. It is we are creating a outer like gaseous atmosphere that is trapping in UV rays, and I'll show you diagrams later. So if you're a bit like worried, then don't worry about it. We'll get to that later. And it's able to trap in all that heat, and with an increased heat, that's going to affect how living things function quite significantly. Okay, so greenhouse gas is an atmospheric gas that absorbs infrared light. Now, infrared is red light. Okay, it is not necessarily very high in energy, but it is a very warm. Okay, temperature wise, it heats things up extremely well. It's not a very fine wave, or like a thin wave. It is a very wide wave, which means that the chance of it actually being bounced off the atmosphere or being kept inside once it enters our atmosphere is extremely high. So the key greenhouse gases include, you need to know these: carbon dioxide, methane or fart, water vapor, and nitrous oxide. Okay, don't call it dinitrous oxide. Don't be weird. Just call it nitrous oxide. The stuff that people put in cars to make their cars go faster. You've all watched what is that series called again? Too Fast, Too Furious, Fast and Furious. I don't know what the other ones are called. Too Fast, Too Furious. All right. So how can the greenhouse gas? How hot can the greenhouse gas effect get? So the planet Venus is further from the sun than Mercury, but has a higher average temperature. Its surface can reach up to 482 degrees Celsius, which is hot enough to melt lead. Okay, remember, lead is extremely heavy and doesn't just melt. Venus's atmosphere is mostly made up of carbon dioxide, which traps so much of the solar radiation that the planet becomes extremely hot. The hostile climate conditions on Venus make it impossible for life to survive. All right, so even though Mercury is closer than Venus, because of Venus's carbon dioxide atmosphere, or heavy carbon dioxide atmosphere, it actually traps in so much heat that the average temperature is much higher. So let's talk about global warming and how it is different to climate change. There are two completely different things. The term global warming is often used in connection with climate change, but what does it actually mean? So global warming refers to the increase in the global Earth's temperature due to the greenhouse effect, which can cause changes in climate. Okay, so Earth's temperature due to the greenhouse effect can cause changes to the climate. So this is just one of the two. You can have global warming. You can also find global cooling. However, the term global warming is being used now to refer to the warming predicted to occur as a result of increased emissions of greenhouse gases and other human activities. This enhanced greenhouse effect may lead to significant climate change. So remember, global warming and climate change are not the same thing and should not be used interchangeably. Global warming is just the idea of how the Earth is warming up. Climate change has to deal with far bigger things like rain, temperatures, land, everything, wind. I can't remember any other things because I'm not a geography teacher right now. Seasons, okay? All of those things are directly going to be affected by climate change. But one of the climate change problems is global warming. All right, so we're going to leave it over there. We're going to do the effects of global warming next. See how this is a really long video. This is why I didn't add in the rest. All right, grade 11s, look after yourselves. Bye.